Imagine firing like 45 watts of superheated argon plasma directly into the delicate millimeter-thin wall of a human colon.
Yeah, that sounds entirely like a piece of high-tech sci-fi weaponry, honestly.
Right. It essentially is. And, it's a recipe for a catastrophic deep tissue burn.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet doctors do this every single day during routine colonoscopies to remove dangerous polyps.
Mm-hmm.
But their primary defense against this, thermal weaponry, it's just a simple squirt of salt water.
It's pretty wild when you think about it.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are analyzing this fascinating piece of clinical footage.
Oh, yeah, the YouTube video.
Exactly. It's a YouTube video titled HCC 1475-24 Saline Injection, uploaded by Dr. Gautamukala S. Raju.
Great source.
Yeah, and our mission today for you listening is to uncover the hidden choreography, the raw physics, and really the life-saving protocols that turn a basic saline injection into a medical force field.
Right, because we tend to visualize the modern operating room as this, this realm of pure cold technology.
Yeah, like lasers and robots.
Exactly. We picture robotic arms, fiber optic cameras, and lasers doing all the heavy lifting while humans just sort of, monitor the screens.
But that's not the whole story.
No, not at all. What Dr. Raju's footage reveals is a completely different reality. We're going to explore how risk is mitigated in real time, second by second.
Which is super intense.
It is. And we'll see why the medical assistant, who is often just standing quietly in the background, is fundamentally the co-pilot of this entire procedure.
Wow, so the assistant is that crucial.
Oh, without their precise execution, all that fancy technology actually becomes a liability.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before the doctor even touches the patient, before any actual procedure begins, we have to talk about the physical gear.
Right, the setup.
Yeah, you cannot execute a delicate internal procedure if your equipment isn't inherently safe from the exact moment you pick it up.
Safety first, always.
Exactly. And in this case, the foundation of that safety is an incredibly basic tool. It's just a standard 10-milliliter syringe pre-filled with saline.
And that 10-milliliter size is highly intentional, by the way.
Oh, really? Why 10?
Well, it provides the perfect ergonomic balance for the assistant to control the fluid pressure.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if the team is preparing for a massive resection, like removing a very large section of tissue, they might prep a giant 100-milliliter saline bag.
Right. Just to have it ready?
Exactly. And they'll load up multiple syringes ahead of time to keep the workflow moving.
Yeah.
But the injection itself always relies on the tactile feedback of that single 10-milliliter syringe.
Got it. And that fluid has to travel into the patient through a specialized injection catheter, right?
Correct.
So reading through the breakdown of this catheter in the source material, the design is brilliantly defensive.
It really is an engineering marvel in its own simple way.
Yeah. It is not just a simple plastic tube delivering liquid. It is literally a tube within a tube.
The inner and outer layers.
Right, so you have the inner catheter, which holds the incredibly sharp metal needle, and that is entirely enclosed within an outer protective catheter.
Yep.
It immediately made me think of, like, a sword scabbard. You have this potentially dangerous blade tucked safely inside a flexible plastic sheath.
What's fascinating here is the necessity of that scabbard design becomes super obvious when you look at the environment it operates in.
Right, because it goes inside the endoscope.
Exactly. The catheter has to travel down the biopsy channel of the endoscope. And an endoscope is a highly sophisticated, incredibly expensive piece of optical equipment.
We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, right?
Oh, easily. And the internal biopsy channel is made of very delicate material.
So if a raw, exposed needle went down there...
If a raw needle were pushed down that 5-foot channel, it would scratch, shred, and just permanently ruin the inside of the scope.
That would be a very expensive mistake.
Very.
Plus, I mean, an exposed needle flying around an operating room is just an immediate hazard to the endoscopist and the assistant anyway.
Exactly. So the tool itself mechanically demands safety.
So the assistant pulls the outer catheter back toward the hub to expose the needle and then pushes it forward to sheath it again.
Right, but before they even hand this lockdown tool to the doctor, the assistant has to perform this ritual called priming.
Priming. Okay, what does that involve?
Priming is a completely non-negotiable safety check. The assistant attaches the 10-milliliter syringe, exposes the needle, and presses the plunger just enough to push a few drops of saline out the tip.
Just to make sure it's working.
Well, they are verifying the mechanical flow, yes, but more critically, they are purging the line.
Oh, getting the air out.
Exactly.
Wrong.
They are making absolutely certain there are 0 air bubbles trapped inside that long tube.
Because injecting air would be bad.
Very bad. Injecting a pocket of air into the delicate tissues of the colon instead of fluid would completely distort the surgical field.
Wow. Okay. So once the line is purged of air, the assistant pulls that outer plastic sheath back over the needle, mechanically locking it down.
Saved and ready to go.
Right. It's the equivalent of putting the safety on a firearm before handing it to a colleague. You are physically verifying that the tool is safe. Handing it over safely is only half the battle, though. Because once that perfectly prepped scabbard goes down the 5-foot tube of the endoscope, the doctor is practically operating blind, right?
Well, they're in a 3-dimensional space using only a 2-dimensional monitor.
Right. Which sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. And that physical limitation is what necessitates the strict, unambiguous choreography between the doctor and the assistant.
The verbal commands, you mean?
Exactly. The verbal commands in the operating room become this highly structured dialogue.
Like military precision.
Pretty much. When the endoscopist pushes the catheter into the visual field of the camera and says, "needle out," that is a definitive command.
And the assistant responds immediately.
Right. The assistant retracts the scabbard, and the needle must become clearly visible on the screen. And then needle in means the assistant immediately pushes the scabbard forward, shielding the blade.
So there's absolutely zero room for casual chatter.
None whatsoever.
And the timing of those commands dictates the success or failure of the entire surgery.
Yes, the video highlights a very specific sequence that has to be followed.
Walk me through it.
The needle enters the visual field, the doctor says, "needle out," and then, and this is crucial, the doctor physically punctures the submucosa under direct vision.
Okay, I want to pause here for you, the listener, to really visualize this. Think of the colon wall like the wall of your house.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. So the surface lining, the mucosa, is the wallpaper. The deep muscle is the drywall.
Okay.
And in between the wallpaper and the drywall is this spongy, vascular layer of insulation. That is the submucosa.
Right.
So the doctor has to see the needle pierce the wallpaper and slip perfectly into that spongy insulation.
And the clinical footage explicitly demonstrates the danger of getting that sequence wrong.
What happens if they mess it up?
Well, if an endoscopist gets impatient and says, "needle out and inject," before the needle is properly anchored under direct vision, the fluid is basically injected blindly. Yeah, and the pressure of the fluid can force the needle entirely through that spongy submucosal layer, past the muscle, and into what is called the extramural space.
Hey, extramural, does that mean they have literally pushed the needle all the way out of the colon and into the abdomen?
That is exactly what it means. Extramural means outside the wall.
That sounds terrifying.
It is a catastrophic complication. If they inject blindly, they risk punching a hole straight through the colon into the abdominal cavity, dumping fluid where it absolutely should not be.
So that turns a routine polyp removal into an emergency situation.
Instantly. The only way to prevent it is for the doctor to physically watch the needle enter the submucosa on the screen before giving the command to inject.
And when that command is finally given, the assistant utilizes a fascinating physical maneuver the video refers to as the tap-tap technique.
Ah, yes, the tap-tap.
Yeah, so in the middle of this high-tech, high-stakes environment, the assistant uses their thumb to literally tack on the plunger of the syringe.
Just tap, tap.
Exactly. It releases these tiny, highly controlled micro squirts of saline into the tissue.
The tactile control there is essential. I mean, the goal isn't to just flood the colon with water.
Right.
The goal is to gently force a small amount of fluid into that specific tissue plane to see how the tissue reacts.
To see if they're in the right spot?
Precisely. If the needle is in the correct spot, in that spongy submucosal layer, those tiny taps of fluid will physically lift the polyp.
It creates a submucosal lift.
Yes, physically raising the dangerous tissue up and away from the underlying muscle.
So the doctor watches the monitor. They see the polyp physically elevate like a tent being pitched.
That's a good way to picture it.
And once they visually confirm that perfect lift, they tell the assistant to inject at a faster, continuous rate to build the fluid cushion.
Right.
And this is where the dynamic gets really intense, because as they push the fluid faster, the assistant begins loudly counting out the volume in the room.
1 ml, 2 ml, 3 ml.
Exactly. But I have to push back on this on behalf of the listener, because I am stuck on one detail here.
Okay, what's that?
The doctor is staring right at a high-definition monitor. They are watching the tissue swell and lift in real time.
Right, they have visual confirmation.
So why does the assistant need to yell out the milliliter count like a metronome? Doesn't the doctor already have all the visual information they need on the screen? It almost sounds distracting.
It is a totally logical question, but it gets to the heart of the illusion of that two-dimensional screen.
How do you mean?
Well, the camera provides high-definition visual data, sure, but it notoriously distorts depth and volume.
Ah, because it's 2D.
Right. The loud counting provides an indispensable auditory safety net that compensates for the camera's limitations.
Okay, I think I'm following.
Think about the physics of the fluid flow. The assistant is pushing 5, 6, maybe 7 milliliters of saline into the catheter.
Right.
If the doctor hears that massive volume being called out, but they do not see the tissue lifting proportionally on the screen.
Oh, an immediate alarm bell goes off in their head.
Exactly.
I see. Because the fluid can't just disappear. If 7 milliliters went in, but the polyp didn't go up, that fluid is escaping somewhere dangerous.
Precisely. A high volume count with a low visual lift usually means the needle has slipped and the fluid is leaking out of the colon wall or being pumped into the wrong tissue plane.
Wow.
The doctor's eyes might be deceived by the 2D image, but the math doesn't lie.
The math doesn't lie. I love that.
The auditory feedback from the assistant completely grounds the visual feedback the doctor is getting. Without that loud counting, the doctor would just be guessing at the actual volume being deployed.
That is a brilliant dual sensory system. The doctor provides the eyes, and the assistant provides the raw volumetric data through sound.
It's true, teamwork.
But, this raises the ultimate question of the whole procedure. We have the fail-safe scabbards.
Right.
We have the strict needle-in, needle-out dialogue. We have the tap-tap technique and the loud auditory counting to prevent puncturing the colon wall.
All of it, yeah.
They are going through a monumental amount of trouble just to raise a polyp up with some salt water. Why? What is the actual physical danger they are going to such extreme lengths to avoid?
The ultimate enemy in this procedure is deep thermal injury.
The burn.
Exactly. To actually remove these polyps, doctors don't just snip them off with scissors. They frequently rely on electrosurgery or cautery.
They burn them off.
They use intense, concentrated thermal energy to cut the tissue and instantly seal the blood vessels to prevent bleeding.
Which sounds intense.
It is. And without that pocket of saline acting as a buffer, that heat would cause catastrophic, irreversible damage deep inside the colon wall.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you can think of this pocket of saline as a literal heat shield.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, if you picture a spacecraft entering the Earth's atmosphere, it has that thick ablative shield on the bottom.
Right, to protect the astronauts.
The shield's entire job is to absorb and dissipate the violent thermal energy of re-entry, so the delicate astronauts inside the capsule don't get scorched. That is exactly what this salt water is doing for the human body.
The physics behind that analogy are spot on. Water has an incredibly high specific heat capacity.
Meaning it takes a lot of energy to heat it up.
Exactly. That means it can absorb a massive amount of thermal energy before its own temperature rises significantly.
So it takes the hit instead of the tissue.
Yes. And the clinical footage provides a stark look at what happens without that shield. Let's look at a tool called APC argon plasma coagulation.
That's the sci-fi weapon we mentioned earlier.
That's the one. This is a device that shoots an arc of ionized argon gas, essentially a controlled bolt of lightning, at the tissue.
Whoa.
Yeah. And if a doctor applies ATC at 45 watts for just 3 seconds directly onto the surface of an unlifted polyp.
But wait, 3 seconds sounds like a blip. It sounds totally harmless.
Visually, it is deeply deceptive. The doctor looks at the screen and sees a superficial white scorching on the surface.
Just a little mark.
Right. It looks like a shallow, highly controlled burn. But the physical reality of 45 watts of plasma is violently different.
Because the energy keeps going.
The energy doesn't stop at the surface. It blasts through the wallpaper and penetrates deep into the submucosa, the insulation.
Wow.
Source video describes the damage as going through and through.
And if we remember our anatomy from earlier, that deep, spongy layer of the submucosa is packed full of major blood vessels.
It is.
So if you are blasting thermal energy blindly into that layer, you are cooking those vessels.
You are literally turning healthy blood vessels into ash.
That is horrifying.
And the most terrifying part of deep thermal injury is that the catastrophe rarely happens on the operating table.
Wait, really? When does it happen?
Well, the heat instantly seals the wound, so the doctor doesn't see any blood at first.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The surgery is declared a success. The patient goes home, thinking they are perfectly fine. But a week later, As the body heals, that dead ashen tissue finally sloughs off.
The scab falls off.
Exactly. The scab falls away, exposing the deeply damaged arteries underneath.
Which means a patient could be sitting on their couch watching TV 7 days after a routine procedure and suddenly experience severe, life-threatening internal bleeding.
Exactly.
That is absolutely terrifying. But if the team executes all of the choreography we just talked about and introduces that simple pocket of salt water under the polyp,
The entire physical reaction changes.
because of the shield.
Right. You build that submucosal fluid cushion first. The polyp is lifted away from the deep tissue. Then you apply that exact same 45-watt argon plasma bolt for 3 seconds.
But this time, the water is there.
Yes. The highest specific heat capacity of the saline absorbs the brunt of the energy. The heat is safely dissipated within the water, essentially starving the plasma of its ability to burn deep into the wall.
So the deep tissue is safe.
The thermal injury is strictly limited to the surface tissue. The deep blood vessels are completely protected.
It fundamentally shifts the reality of the surgery. It turns a wildly unpredictable, deeply dangerous burn into a highly controlled, superficial resection.
It's night and day.
And according to Dr. Raju's footage, this technique isn't just for special occasions, right?
No, not at all.
The doctor in the video uses this submucosal fluid injection liberally for any polyp over 10 to 15 millimeters.
It is just the gold standard for making the resection safer.
That's incredible.
And beyond the thermal protection, that simple pocket of water actually changes the structural landscape of the colon to favor the surgeon.
How so?
Well, colon polyps can be incredibly tricky. They often hide in difficult anatomical locations, drooping over the natural folds of the intestine.
Hard to say.
Exactly. But when the assistant pushes that saline in, the submucosal cushion physically inflates the area.
It puffs it up.
Right. It forces the hidden tissue to stand up, defining the true margins of the polyp and revealing dangerous sections that might have been hiding completely out of view of the camera.
So the saline is a heat shield, a mechanical jack lifting the tissue, and a diagnostic tool all in one.
All of the above.
But what about the risks of the injection itself? We talked about the danger of punching through the wall, but assuming the technique is correct, sticking a needle into the vascular submucosa has to carry some inherent risk, doesn't it?
You think so, but the clinical data is remarkably reassuring on this front.
Okay, good.
Puncturing a highly vascular area does carry a slight risk of hitting a blood vessel directly with the tip of the injection needle.
What happens then?
If that happens, it can cause a submucosal hematoma, which is basically a localized blood blister underneath the surface.
Ouch.
But the video notes a staggering statistic.
Yeah.
The endoscopist states they have only seen that particular complication occur a handful of times over the course of 20 to 25 years of practice.
Wait, really? A handful of times in a quarter of a century?
Yeah, it's incredibly rare.
That safety record is almost difficult to comprehend in the medical field. It speaks volumes about why these strict protocols exist in the first place.
What's fascinating here is the juxtaposition of the complex and the elemental.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we are talking about modern medicine operating at the absolute bleeding edge, right?
Yeah.
High-definition fiber optic arrays, articulating catheters, argon gas plasma burning at 45 watts.
Dual sci-fi stuff.
They are deploying advanced thermal physics inside the human body. And the definitive defense against it, the mechanism that actually keeps the patient alive and prevents catastrophic delayed bleeding, is one of the most basic abundant substances on planet Earth.
Salt water.
They're using simple fluid dynamics and the heat capacity of salt water to basically outsmart the technology.
That is beautiful, honestly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's look at the incredible journey we just took based on Dr. Raju's footage.
It's been a journey.
It has. We started with a mundane 10-milliliter plastic syringe and an empty plastic scabbard. And from that basic starting point, we uncovered an entire hidden world of strict, life-saving choreography. We saw how unambiguous commands like needle in and needle out prevent the destruction of $40,000 equipment and protect the staff from injury.
Right. And we examined the terrifying physical stakes of the extramural space and how doctors avoid punching through the colon wall by anchoring the needle under direct visual observation.
Yeah, we learned about the tactile finesse of the tap-tap method and those incredibly clever auditory safety nets.
The counting.
Exactly. We saw how a medical assistant counting out loud like a metronome provides the doctor with real-time volumetric data, catching dangerous fluid leaks that a two-dimensional camera simply cannot perceive.
And ultimately, We explored the physics of thermal protection.
The heat shield.
Yep. We broke down how the specific heat capacity of a simple pocket of salt water creates an impenetrable internal heat shield, absorbing the violent energy of electrosurgery and completely neutralizing the threat of severe, delayed internal bleeding.
It is a phenomenal reminder for you, the listener. The next time you hear someone talk about going in for a routine medical procedure or a simple polyp removal, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to remember the invisible, highly coordinated dance of physics and communication happening quietly in the background. Remember the medical assistant loudly calling out the numbers.
The unsung heroes.
Truly. Remember the strict safety protocols acting as the silent co-pilot? There is absolutely nothing simple about the level of mechanical and verbal coordination required to keep us safe in the modern operating room.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it leaves us with something quite profound to ponder.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if a simple, strategically placed pocket of salt water is the definitive difference between a routine, successful procedure and a catastrophic internal burn, what other incredibly basic elemental solutions are hiding in plain sight? Think about the fundamental forces around us. Water, air, gravity, ambient temperature. How many other simple physical properties are quietly acting as the unsung heroes inside the world's most technologically advanced medical treatments, just waiting for us to notice them?
That is such a cool thought. It really makes you look at the entire concept of high-tech medicine differently. It is not just a room full of computers and lasers doing the work.
Not at all.
Sometimes the most powerful, life-saving tool in the room is just a foundational understanding of physics, a perfectly timed command, and a gentle tap-tap on a plastic syringe. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.